Thank you, and thank you, Andrew. It's no question a very tough act to follow. But I have to say, starting from scratch is so much of that I agree with. So thank you for bringing all of that to our attention. I'd like to thank Genuine Jersey and John and the team for inviting me to speak at this conference. It's really kind, and to get an opportunity to kind of follow up from last year. There's no doubt for me it's a privilege to be here. It's one that I look forward to every year. And as well as doing this speech, I'll be here for the rest of the morning and look forward to learning more through the programme. Farming is an intrinsic part of Jersey's identity. It's shaped not only our beautiful countryside and landscape, but also our island's heritage, its culture and its international identity. But given all those qualities, I have to pose the question, have we begun, perhaps 20 years ago, to take farming for granted in Jersey? I was struck recently by a quote that I came across from a letter to Friedrich Engels, the longtime companion of Karl Marx, who intended to visit Jersey for the third time in 1885. And the quote was from a friend of his who had recently visited Jersey. And he just wrote, "What thrice double asses are those Jerseymen, to destroy their orchards and turn their beautiful island into one monstrous potato patch." It went on. It got worse. But the reason that stood out was obviously that was a point in time when Jersey's farming industry was changing, was innovating, was finding new markets. It was moving with the times. It had to move with the times. And despite the risk, and you've got to think, that's on the back of things like potato famine. I can understand somebody looking at an industry that was moving into potatoes at a time when potatoes had had a particularly bad time, wondering what on earth are they doing over here. But 150 years later, we're still growing, and the industry in potatoes are still selling outside of these shores. So it shows me that Jersey farmers got it right then. And as Andrew's just told you, I believe Jersey farmers are getting it right now. Not only have our innovative farmers been vindicated by the global success of Jersey rules, but the coaties and hedgerows that crisscross our countryside are synonymous with our island's natural beauty. That crop has shaped this island. It shapes the island that we see today. Products like Royals and Jersey milk are a key part of our island's international identity. Indeed, when I was recently at a gathering of farmers at Rob Pershaw's farm, I spoke to a gentleman from North Carolina. He came up to me, and the very first thing he said to me was to congratulate Jersey on the work that we do with the Jersey cow in Rwanda. I was bowled over. I thought, this is an American man telling me about the Jersey cow in Africa. How much more value can you get from a product, essentially, because that's what the Jersey cow is? What clearer example of the overall value of our agricultural sector can you ask for? And I do believe that we've actually begun to take that for granted. Because despite its historic significance to our island and the enormous value that farming brings, there has been, as Andrew quite rightly said, a steady reduction in support for farming over recent decades. Successive governments have drawn down support for agriculture precisely at exactly the same time as neighbouring jurisdictions have stepped theirs up. The graph that Andrew showed you, and we showed you last year as well, which shows Jersey's support per head of population at about, I think it's about £24. The UK's at 96, and the EU's up at about €124, or £124 per head of population. How possibly can we expect our farmers, who face clearly issues with economies of scale, because we don't have them, to then go onto international markets and expect our products to compete, when straight away every other government around Europe, and to be honest, around the world, is supporting their farmers to a much greater extent than we are ours. I don't understand why, over 20 years, we decided as a government, successive governments, to withdraw that support. I don't understand what it was. But I'm committed that this is a trend we must reverse, and we are reversing, because the one good thing about that little graph was that it shows it's ticking up. And I'll get to the little bit where it ticks down at the very end shortly. So we must reverse that trend if we expect to maintain a sustainable rural economy on the island and preserve both this industry and the island we know, I think even more importantly, the island we know for future generations. So earlier this year as Assistant Minister, I was pleased to present the economic framework for the rural environment. This strategy provides a foundation to help deliver additional government support and funding towards our agricultural sector, as well as giving a longer-term vision of increasing sustainability. Now, as Minister, I'm determined to build upon this to direct renewed focus from government towards the sector and to support businesses, both big and small, across our entire rural economy. We are proposing in this year's government plan an additional £1.5 million support for the rural economy in 2023. Most of that has been found since the elections in July. This will bring the government's total support for agriculture to over £3 million for the first time in over a decade. That's still less than 0.5% of government expenditure, but it does represent a big step forward. Apologies if I get this slightly wrong. Back in 1993, the support for the sector was £5 million. That's £1993. That equates, as I understand it, to £18 million in today's money. So in 1993, we provided £18 million of support. Today, I'm pleased to be telling you that we're increasing it to £3 million, but it gives you an idea of how far away we are, how far down that curve we turned. There's no question we're still well short of comparable jurisdictions, but this does reflect my commitment to begin correcting this downward trend in support that we've seen. As many of you will know, and as you saw on that graph, the government plan provides a flexible roadmap for growth over the long term. And whilst it does show 24 and 25 having lower levels of support, I'm going to come clean with you. There's nothing, as I often say, Jersey, we don't have nuclear secrets, so I can tell you exactly what's happened there. To balance the books, I said, right, I want to give £900,000 of support for the Rural Initiative Scheme this year. I had the choice. I could do 700, 700, 700, or I could do 900, 700, 600. I wanted to get the money out the door next year, so I said, right, we're doing 900 next year, and I will find the extra 200 for 2024 to bring that to at least 900 the year after. And in 2025, I will find the extra 300,000 to bring it to 900 the year after that, at the very least. So that's my commitment to you. Please do not look at those years for 24 and 25 and see it as an indication that support will decline. It will not decline. My job is to make sure it does not decline. Quite the opposite, it will increase. That's what I want to do. And that's, as we've had conversations, as Andrew said, with the Treasury Minister, I really hope that that is the way it goes. So please don't look at that as any indication of a decline in support after 2023. I did that quite simply to balance the books and make sure we can get a government plan that works. It's not too late for government to step up its support for agriculture, but there's no question in my mind we can't leave it any later. I know that the last 12 months have been particularly challenging for the industry, with increasing overheads across the board. You heard it from Andrew, rising fuel and fertiliser costs, an increased wage bill, record temperatures during the summer have put pressure on the industry, and there's no question the outlook for 2023 is tough. There are also systemic changes coming down the road, both in succession planning and the availability of land. Also rising interest rates, the cost of living crisis, which are increasingly being felt by everyone. Last weekend I visited a farm and saw the fertiliser that has arrived on that farm to be used for next year. Not only has the price increased dramatically, but payment was expected now. Previously, payment had been expected at the end of the year, or the end of the season. That's changed. That causes massive cash flow issues. I understand that, but it's so important that I'm being told this by you guys, so I can then address those issues and try to get the cash to you sooner. On top of this, I know that you have also absorbed many costs without passing them on to consumers, but this cannot go on, because that is not a sustainable situation. Indeed, for the first time that I can remember, Jersey milk is now on a par in terms of price with many UK equivalents. It used to be the case that we would look around and say, oh, you know, because we protect the market in Jersey, therefore the price of milk in Jersey is more expensive. Go on to supermarket websites in the UK and you will see that the price of milk in Jersey is no longer more expensive than the UK. Which thankfully, for the farmers in the UK, supermarkets have realised what they're doing to their farmers and they're turning that around. We need to recognise that over here too. Despite these pressures, the agricultural sector has demonstrated time and time again its huge value to Jersey. Farming has been essential to protecting our natural environment and countryside, and I think this role is increasingly being recognised and respected by islanders as we look to reduce our carbon footprint. Critically, and this is something I'm so proud of within the industry, and it's why I am willing to champion the industry so strongly, you have led the island's economy in opportunities to improve productivity, expand mechanisation, embrace new technologies, increase sustainability, moving constantly down towards a path of environmental improvement. All of which mean that you've delivered enormous efficiency gains, and in my view that needs to be rewarded. I speak about Jersey's enterprise spirit, and I get concerned overall in the island that Jersey is losing its enterprising spirit. But what I see in the agricultural community is the enterprising spirit very much at the fore, constantly changing. And that's despite the fact, we often think as we get older we don't like change more, but we know that as our industry is getting older, it's continuing to change. In fact, the pace of change increases. In the last few years, we've increasingly seen our island's lack of resilience when it comes to food security. And while I accept that we will never be wholly self-sufficient, we must recognise the fundamental truth that it is this sector that puts the food on our supermarket shelves. So I want government to step up support to the industry in many ways, not only financially, but that will be the case. Because it is only by acting holistically that we will be able to help younger islanders see a future in farming. It's critical that we reach out, and I think there is some great work going on with the RJHS, with the Cultivate programme, and Jess doing that there. But we need to help, and we need to try to find ways. Andrew talked about cooperatives. I agree with everything Andrew said there, and there are other methods that we have in this the strategy, which really are designed to help us create structural changes that will enable people who aren't in farming families today to move into farming. Because I know there are young islanders who want to be farmers, who are fascinated by farming and want to go there. They don't want to spend the rest of their lives in an office. With our new rural support scheme and the rural economic framework, we now have the tools to effectively direct funds to the sector, to provide public funding in recognition of and as a reward for the public goods which are delivered by all of you working in the rural economy. Really importantly, this new system will be inclusive, equitable and accessible. And for the first time in 15 years, we will be providing support to growers of protected crops, poultry farmers and smallholders. Because agriculture isn't just about cows and potatoes. As much as we love the cows and potatoes, it's not just about the big farms. It's about a whole range of farming ecosystem. It's a multifaceted industry, and in government now we recognise that we need to support it across all areas. So I want you to know that in me you have an advocate who will champion agriculture in the States and around the Council of Ministers table. I cannot and I will not be complacent. When I look at farming in Jersey, I see an ancient industry that has constantly reinvented itself and moved with the times. It is a sector that is innovated, changed and improved to the extent that it provides every single islander with value, regardless of whether they buy local produce or not. That value can be seen in every well-maintained hedgerow, in every financial services advert that features a Jersey cow, in every UK TV programme that highlights Jersey Royals, or indeed every American farmer who is staggered by the work we do in lesser developed countries. We all gain from the work that you do, and finally, I hope that is being recognised. It's time for government to step up and back you, because your future success is also Jersey's future success, because in Jersey, farming does matter. Later, you'll hear my colleague John Vautier talk about the inclusive, equitable and accessible system that we believe will help the industry move into the future. Genuinely, I think this is an exciting step forward. I hope you'll agree, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts over the coming days. I also look forward to the questions with some trepidation. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of today's conference.